Hello and welcome to episode 512 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, the place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt, and joining me, as always, is the artist and creator of the epic ongoing webcomic Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And a man who, every time I see him on this video call, I'm entranced by his hair.
I just watched it actually.
Look at that. Tony Esmond. Look,
there's a lot of grey in it now. Look,
really?
Grey.
Really?
Man, I'm rocking out this big grey fucking stripe there,
like,
which you keep saying to get highlight.
Who's that bloke who used to do World of Sport? Dickie. He had that
Dickie Davis. Yeah.
Dickie Davis had that big white bit. Yeah, it's quite cool.
Wow. But instead,
Dan's
Tony,
the Dickie Davis of comics.
I want to stroke your hair, Tony. Is that weird to say?
No.
Nothing's weird. Nothing's weird on this show.
We don't kink shame here.
We're three grown men sat around talking to each other on a Sunday night.
I just out and out asked our guest whether he had sex with a lady with a puppet earlier.
Indeed. And if yep.
You have to find the answer to that.
And by listening.
You're probably thinking, oh God, what
the fuck?
Crazy discussion is this? Yeah. It's actually a really fantastic.
It's actually quite normal.
It's a really fantastic discussion with Daniel McCloskey about his comics. And another creator that you're gonna, we spoke about on the show, but you're gonna sign up to his brilliant type of comics. So
I met him before, but if I was a new person listening to that interview, it's not down to us, completely down to Daniel.
No,
I go, fucking, I'm invested in this dude's comics. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's got a bit of heart about him. Yeah, definitely.
Free comics.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're here to recommend comics, talk about comics, making comics, and there's one particular thing in comics that happened a couple of days ago. I don't know whether it's a huge marketing exercise, but it was. I didn't know this until I walked into a forbidden planet. Yes, I walked into a forbidden planet.
That's right.
And which was, I came out with, let's get the important stuff out of the way. I finally got my hands on the adaptation of Alien.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
The Walt Simonson
one.
The chunky one, yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah.
It was a paperback version. It was only going for like £8. How can you not? How can you not?
Grab that.
And I immediately read that as soon as I got home, which was amazing. And a classic, and I can see why. But I walked in, and they were giving out free Superman comics. Why? Because it was Superman Day.
Yes.
On Friday. Talk about a Good Friday.
Was it Good Friday that was the day then, was it?
Apparently.
Was it right?
18th,
oh, right.
18th of April. I completely forgot where we were in the fucking year then on the show. But yeah, so the comics they were giving out were obviously just DC reprints of Man for All Seasons. That's the Tim Sale one, isn't it? It was an issue 1, and
it's a great comic, man.
All-Star
really
Superman,
lovely.
All-Star Superman issue 1.
Oh, okay. Do you see the price that's going for the initial sketch of Superman on that?
No,
it's going for like 500k.
Yeah.
Ooh. Don't think I'd pay that, but yeah, good on him.
No.
Yeah. So I've yet to read those books. So obviously, had a flick through them, and I hold my hand up and say I haven't read them before. I know so many people have, and Superman is a character that has some people have a connection with that character. Other people don't. A lot of people have opinions. Even more people have opinions than
in comics?
Anything else. Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think even if you're not invested in the character, it's one of those. I still have a feeling about what I want this character to be. Does that make sense? I think everyone. It's such a epic, legendary sort of character. In fact, I think Tony, I believe on our particular WhatsApp, you sent a video of there was an animation, wasn't there? Of all
I love that animation. It's just, I don't think it gets enough love. I mean, it's also the summer of Superman, isn't it? I think mostly due to the movie.
The movie in July, but I think what I hope. Maybe it's just because I'm just being positive about this. I'm hopeful. But it feels like there is a change in the wind of Superman should be about hope. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like that. I know they're going to market this film like it's back to it's a figure of hope, and it should be positive. But it is one of the characters that is that, isn't it? It should.
Well, I mean, I'm of an age where I was 10 when the first Superman movie came out, and it means more to me than Star Wars. I was of an age where I saw Star Wars as well when it came out, but Superman, because I was already a comic fan, it means so much to me, that movie. Yeah. I actually taped it. I taped it off the television, not because we didn't have a videotape. I've got audio tape still in a box here of like me taping it off, and I think Superman should be that. I think that's the greatest thing. And I have to say, I think I sent you the image of it, didn't he? Summer of Superman special, number 1, which came out, which has got writing by Mark Waid, Dan Slott, and Joshua Williamson, and art by Jorge Jimenez and Tom A. Morey. And I think Dan Morey does some stuff in it as well. And that, I think I put on the Slack, it warmed my cockles, man. It's the nicest comic. It's just nice, clean.
You need stuff like that, man.
Good adventures,
you really do.
Yeah. And I think
can't be dark and misery all the fucking time.
But do you think?
Superman's a character to bring that.
And here's the comic book discussion we're going to kick off with. I love throwing these in now. These little topics of discussion. Do you think in this modern world, ever since like the Dark Knight and that discussion, I think from the Dark Knight, comics started to get darker. And the way we're looking at. Go to an image revolution when we're looking at more realistic, well, not realistic, but you know what I mean, darker characters.
Yeah.
And then we get more realistic characters.
Grit their teeth a lot.
A lot of them are mixed with. A lot of them then get political intrigue thrown into it, or do you think that because of that, a character like Superman, who is one of the biggest characters, he's one of the Mount Rushmore of comic book characters. Especially superhero characters, I think, has suffered because. Let me put it as in a controversial question for you, right? Did Superman suffer because of the Dark Knight Returns?
It did. I think it also suffered for a number of other things. I think the Alan Moore comic. I think he suffers from that. Tomorrow? Yeah, I think it suffers because of that. I think it suffers because of All-Star Superman. I think he suffered due to the making Superman a team book. I think it suffered by them, and as much as I like the John Byrne stuff, it took away some of the magic that we used to get, some of the outlandish stuff we used to get from Superman. I think the fact that Lois Lane's now a super person, his son's a superhero, it's a team book, I think definitely takes away from it. And I think a lot of the art styles, have taken away from it as well over the years. He went to I like the War World thing, but it wasn't really classic Superman. And I think you're right. I think
a DC house style, as they called it, hurt it.
Yeah, I think so. I heard Dave Gibbons saying Superman's the big boy scout and Batman's the badass of the DC universe. And I think you strip it back, that's what they should be.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's why it's great when you see the two of them together, because they're two of those polar opposites. But...
Yeah, the recent movies have cut into the vibe as well. I mean, we didn't really need Superman versus Batman. That's just a horrible dark mess.
Man, I remember watching the first time Man of Steel. I was like, I don't know what this is. It ain't my Superman.
No, it starts off okay, and then it goes into like killing people and cities being broken down. And I agree. Yeah, but I have to say, it happens every so often with me and Superman. I will always buy Superman comics, but I bought that and I thought. Yeah, I mean, I say what you will about Mark Waid. He's a writer who does stuff that I've enjoyed over the years. Not everything. I think he involves himself a bit too much in the online bullshit, which put him off for me a while. But I think this whole the Superman he's writing there, he knows Superman. Yeah, he really does.
I think. I mean, I'm in no position to talk about any of the modern stuff or where it is now, because I think the only Superman stuff I read in the recent ones was that Absolute one recently. Of course, we had a discussion. If you didn't, go back and listen to that.
But even that, I think, pulls away from it.
I didn't.
Yeah, but with that's almost like a Elseworlds type tale. So if it's pulling away, it's part of the remit of what those things are. And I know there are obviously creators who have been doing well. I know, like Tom Taylor's obviously doing big gun, doing whatever with the Superman, and I'm not reading them, so I can't speak to that. I can only speak to I guess the books that I kind of want to a Superman story I want to see. I think it does for me. It speaks that I'm not rushing out to read a Superman book. Maybe that probably says more about me than the quality.
It's a long time since he's had a hot book out.
And I think, I personally think that some of the strongest Superman stories that we'll get will be those like a one-off graphic novel or a small miniseries, something self-contained that's not connected to anything. Because a solo character, I feel like for all the DC universe being built up and all these characters, and they've all got families, or they've all got teams, that sort of thing. Much like a Batman, I just want that character. I don't want jam in my peanut butter. Sometimes I just want the peanut butter because the taste of it is fucking awesome.
Well, the peanut butters, you go to buy the peanut butter, don't you?
Yeah.
When you're buying the Superman comic, that's what you hope. I have to say, I'd just like to caveat, because people will read this and I'm sure someone will mention it to me, but it's great, that Superman comic I'm talking about, until you get to the last few pages. And then you get, spoilers, you get Booster Gold tied to a wall being tortured, and you get the evil Legion of Superheroes appear, and you're like, right, I'm just going to blank that out. Just blanking those last 4 pages out. I'm enjoying it for what it is. Where who's when Steel marries Lana Lang in it, and it's just like this nice moment in Smallville.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is what Smallville's about. Everyone's
yeah.
Man, if you, like you said, you so much time you spend in like creating these comic books all like evil and dark and grim and gritty, it's like at some point some people just go like, we've had enough of this, man. We want to go back to kind of the palette cleanser of Superman. It's a kind of a bit sunshine and blue skies.
And great art, man, in it as well.
And also,
very nice art.
like, I sometimes think that in order to sell a lot of these sort of characters, you've got to sell them to a generation that isn't the 40, 50, 60, well,
we're all going to die off.
The reason that these characters have gone on for so long is because they've always appealed to generations of characters. But it seems like the appeal is less so as people are being more serious about it. It's a man from another planet that can fucking fly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, fighting bad guys and giant aliens.
Yeah.
But
occasionally we want him to fight, a magician from Dimension X who turns up and turns everyone's feet into, I don't know, flip-flops or something. Occasionally we want that out of Superman, don't we? I think.
Yeah.
That's the stories you can tell with Superman, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I can't think of the one off the top of my head, which is why I'm going to throw this to you guys right now, who have probably read more of Supes than me. Do you have a standout moment from Superman comics? Not necessarily a run or series, but a specific moment.
I go back to the wackiness of stuff that I was reading with Kurt Swan. There's I can't remember the issue now. There's a Mr. Mixelplick. I don't know how you say his name, but he turns up and turns the Daily Planet into a building made of paper, and there's this great cover of it happening, and I'm like, this is brilliant. I love this.
Some of those old covers are absolutely awesome. There's one where he's like eating loads of hamburgers. He's like, if I stop eating hamburgers, I'm going to die. I was like, this is fucking nuts.
Yeah. It makes you want to read it.
You're like, what? Yeah.
I love that sort of thing, man. Yeah. And that's what I'm giving his credit. That's what Morrison wanted to do. He's talked about that quite a lot again recently. I'm not sure why I'm seeing those videos again, but he's talked a bit about wanting to bring back that sort of Silver Age weirdness that we had that did carry significantly through the Bronze Age as well, but he wants to bring that back, and I can see that why. He did that a lot with Batman, didn't he?
Because obviously he did All-Star Superman, and that's one of the ones that constantly gets referenced. It is that, isn't it? The reference.
It is good, and it's a good comic. But to me,
the girl on the roof that I'm thinking of.
The goth girl. But it's a good comic, and it's well made, and you can't fault it for its craft. But I never felt like it was the regular Superman somehow.
It's not. No. It's like a kind of an Elseworld soup.
You know what it's about, Vince, don't you?
Yes.
About Superman dying, So it's not.
He gets his powers like up to the like thousands and thousands of times, doesn't he? And basically, it's slowly killing him and how he deals with his last sort of.
It's like a cancer thing, isn't it?
It understands the sort of the more the character of trying to like helping people out and being the kind of the light and.
I mean, there's a lot of talk at the moment about DC doing so much better than Marvel, and I'll make them right on that. There's some fucking pretty dire comics coming out of DC, but on the whole, the quality is on the rise at DC compared to Marvel, where it's not.
That's good.
And I do say, like, well done. I applaud DC for saying, let's do Superman this year. Let's push Superman this year.
Yeah.
They'd be fucking stupid not to because of the film coming out. I don't understand why they wouldn't.
But exactly. And no matter what your opinions of past Superman films or the character or whatever, and like I say, Tony, to double on what you just said, is Superman is a character. He's been the albatross because he is seen as boring most of the time because of who he is. There's been a real, let's face it, over the past 10, 15 years, and there are many Superman fans that listen to this show, and we know and we understand, and like you've been with that character through thick and thin, so that's fair enough. That's all that matters. But also, being a fan of that character, you know the reputation that character has, because we like Batman. Batman's so much cooler than Superman. Is he? Because he's not now. I don't think. He's
as a writer, I feel like it's a harder challenge. If someone said, "Right, you got to write a scene where Batman does badass things," and then you got to write a scene where like there's a genuinely touching moment with Superman. But if the secondary one is fucking way harder.
Yeah. But I mean, let's put this question like this: is it harder for people to think of someone doing a good thing than it is to think of a character beating the shit out of someone?
It is with my wife.
Maybe
it's a lot easier to write, isn't it? It's a lot easier to write.
I mean? That's painting it with a very broad strokes.
We're all old softies on here. We love to see that.
Man, I want to see that heartwarming tales and the uplifting stuff.
Yeah.
I really do.
And the most powerful moments are usually when these characters don't do what their powers or their tools or the gadgets tell them to do anyway. It's who they are as people that
generally switched off from all the kind of movies and TV's series about superhero stuff, but I'm interested to see what that Superman film is going to be like. That's the only thing that I've got.
And I hate the whole it's had to go back for reshoots. Oh, fuck off, mate.
Every fucking film does. Every fucking film does. So
I know it's pointed out like the Silver Surfer and that she's a lady. I was like, look, shit, but like that's what they presented. Like they put that on screen, so you can judge it for that.
Yeah, I think Mark said something like, but you might find they'll tweak this as just an early. Don't put it out then, mate. Don't put it out.
Yeah.
If it's like it looks, and it does look a bit blurry, crap, doesn't it?
If you present it like that, you're going to get comments like that.
Well, I mean that's
understandable.
That's a problem with completely CGI characters anyway, especially CGI metallic characters. There's only been one that's always been fantastic, and that's the T-1000. Thank you very much, Mike.
As we said, the Rise of the Silver Surfer, that's fucking really decent.
Mate, I saw that with my young son and it blew his fucking mind.
Yeah.
And he was so excited when the Human Torch chases him.
We're talking about the effects of the Silver Surfer, not the
effects
film.
of the Silver Surfer, It's the fact that he looks alien in it. He's not just some fucking guy that's silver. He's kind of like, he's proportioned to a rod.
I also like the bit because he passes through the bottom of the board.
Through the board,
I love stuff like that.
Yeah, you if you can get they did a cartoon Silver Surfer a few years ago, a couple of decades ago. Probably. There's a lot of Kirby in that cartoon.
Yeah,
nice.
That was on Prime for a little bit. It's an interesting watch. Yeah.
Do you know what? I think an interesting, if you're going to do a Silver Surfer cartoon now, I mean the Kirby way, doing a Kirby adaptation would be really cool.
Yeah.
That might even fit with that sort of, how the Superman Batman animated series, having that retro sort of vibe.
Yeah.
If they don't do that, something that's really out there with a sort of Aeon Flux kind of vibe with like real weirdness.
People would lose their mind if they see that Kirby stuff. Yeah. That's a good point, man. I know the Justice League Unlimited did a few. They did Calibac and they did a few Kirby creations, didn't they? In Darkseid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I think Dave Kennedy, he did a sneak peek of a Silver Surfer piece he's working on. Looks amazing. Does all these stuff.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Going back to Dave Kennedy, me and him did an NIA on that Aliens book you bought, Vince.
Nice.
He brought a lot of good, because there's all this stuff about the box alien and stuff like that in it. And
I bought that off of that episode.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's good. Yeah,
because he tells a story about how his dad got it from.
That's right.
Very heartwarming. Yeah.
So I have to hear what you think about it, V, because it's. I think they got flown over to see the film, and then flown home again, and I think they had very little reference to do it from. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's scenes in the book that aren't in the film, but they said no, it was in the film we saw.
And the people who made the film would say no, that's a rumor, that it was ever in the film, but it's in the comic.
I think this will be a discussion we pick up at a later date because I will.
That alien's an absolute chonker. That's what you talk about in NIA. he's a fucking unit in that. Like,
destroyer, wasn't he?
Yeah. He's fucking massive. Anyway,
good.
Yes. Speaking of more great comics that you need to check out, let's get to the discussion. This has been fascinating. Thank you for amusing me, gents, with
Thank you guys.
with your views on the soups. But from fantastic super comics to others, here is our wonderful chat with the creator of Cloudtown, Daniel McCloskey. Right then, now. Anyone who's listened to this show, especially recently, will know we've talked about the comic series Cloudtown in the past. Mr. Esmond brought it to our attention.
The first issue was a few years ago, I'm going to say now, and then about a month ago we talked about the second one.
Yes, we fell over ourselves to talk about Cloudtown, Friends in Stormy Weather, which is part 1, chapters 1 to 6 is what we've what we've read, which we're going to delve further into that. How are we going to delve further into that? Well, we're only talking to the creator, the one and only Daniel McCloskey. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're right, Dan.
Pleasure, mate. So we've actually met before, Daniel, haven't we? Met at SPX a couple of years ago. Yeah.
You gave me a comic, Hidden Lives?
Hidden Lives? I gave you Hidden Lives today. Oh, okay.
Well remembered.
Do you not remember what comics you give people, Tony?
Not really.
Well, I gave him something. I don't know what I gave him.
You gave me a badge.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, you gave me an animal
You've got
badge.
enough to read, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
you did. You gave me a badge. Yeah, no, good stuff.
Yeah. And certainly there's more than enough to read of your work with Cloudtown and this new book, which is going to be crowdfunding soon. And if you listen to one of the recent shows, we were very lucky to get a bit of a sneak preview of what's coming. And I know there's going to be a lot of like process talk and just delving into what on earth it is. But for the listeners who aren't necessarily aware of Cloudtown, the universe and the concept of the book and stuff, just tell us a little bit more about what it is you're creating.
Yeah, so Cloudtown is a series that kind of starts off with the graphic novel I did. It was my first book with a major publisher. Called Cloudtown. It's about 2 teenage girls that have to go to a new high school because their old high school was smashed by a giant monster. But it's also
that old chestnut.
Classic. Yeah. It's also a little bit about some working class kids just dealing with issues after. It's a traumatic thing to have your high school smashed.
Yeah.
So dealing with those issues, dealing with being at a new school, which is like a rich kid school, and they are not rich kids. And then this story, which does stand alone. You can totally read it on your own without reading Cloudtown. Friends in Stormy Weather is in that world, but it's after basically the mean girl, super bully of the last book is at the bottom of the pecking order now. And it really focuses on her experience trying to figure out who she is after she's kind of hit rock bottom for a teenager for an early time. In a way that is not totally undeserved. And so she's trying to figure out she believes that might makes right effectively. So she doesn't even think the person that's bullying her now is doing the wrong thing. Her philosophy is that's the way the world is. I just lost. Right. And it's a lot of good stories, I think, struggle with something that feels genuinely true. Like the villain's argument should feel indisputable, and then I think as a storyteller and as a reader, our job is to wrestle with that and see if it is really true. If we are looking at the world in a more open-hearted way,
Yeah. But the thing is, what you're doing there, and this is why I liked it so much, is you're playing in the pool of the personal, the interrelationships, the understandable, the relatable. But it's set against a backdrop of something that is not, something that is more fantastical. Did you want to explain that bit as well?
Right. Yeah. There are tons of crazy things. They live on a floating island jutting from a rip in another universe, which it is. Maybe it's telling that it took me this long to get to that part.
Right, yeah,
but...
it's interesting. Yeah, no, it is interesting that. Yeah.
And so the first job of some of the characters is piloting a giant robot and protecting the city, which as a trope is very fun. It's usually teenagers get the job of piloting giant robots for some reason. So it ends up being somebody's first job. And you get to kind of combine what is the extraordinary with the mundane, right? And really feel the impact of divorcing things that are real from the specifics of our world, make it much easier to think about sometimes, right?
Okay.
And so if you're talking about a bad neighborhood being a neighborhood that's smushed by monsters and that's why it's cheap to live there, is really different than if I were to talk about gun violence or something.
Yeah, socioeconomic and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of hot button issues that are worth having direct conversations about. But I also think that if you just scrub off all the serial numbers of everything and think about it in kind of a extremely abstract way, it becomes a safer space for people to think about and talk about.
Yeah,
especially young people, because you're I don't know, you're figuring out how you think about the world, and there are all these identities that are connected to specific thoughts about specific issues. So sometimes I think that there's a value in having a space where the specifics are gone,
Yeah, make it less about the classroom. Yeah, more about the story.
Yeah, and so, but on the other hand, there's also the next chapter. There's gonna have I'm doing this free online. If you don't support the Kickstarter, you can still join at studiobeancan.com, a can of beans, Studio Bean Can.
Nice.
Cool.
And get a couple of pages every 2 weeks as I finish them, basically. And soon there's going to be brains grow. They're going to be piloting a robot as it regrows, because it's a giant cyborg, and there'll be brains growing around people and eyeballs coming out and all this fun, gross stuff to draw. And
which I feel is going to tie into, we're going to ask you the influences later, clearly.
Yeah. There's the very few times my dad, this is interesting. My dad is a children's book author. So writer, illustrator. So when this book first came out, it was really meaningful to me to get to go out and do events with my dad for the first time.
Cool.
Nice.
And I got to meet some young, very young readers, the 7-year-olds that I did not realize were going to be reading this book, just delighted by the fact that my giant robots look like they're wearing underpants, and just losing their minds about that. And I try to remember there are people that will reading it potentially that are just going to be delighted by something like that. And do giant robots fart? Include that. And also, we have all these teenagers throughout the history of giant robot comics, and nobody ever flipped anyone off in a giant robot. So, we have someone getting flipped off, And
that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't think enough is thought about the actual sort of teenage mentality of someone within, because everyone, when we see all these sort of stories, don't we, the kids who are, it's almost like they grow up instantly and they just become generals and they just become fully grown adults. But if you think about it, they're still kids.
And maybe that's a difference between an American perspective or a more modern perspective compared to a lot of early giant mech comics come from Japan. In thinking about the war, and a lot of, especially Gundam, I'm wearing a Gundam jacket right now. Gundam was a world in which, again, this is, I am not a historian, nor am I Japanese, but my understanding is, samurais got shot by guns, and it was a bummer. And then Japan had to change a lot in a short amount of time. But the group fantasy of what if our young people went to war this time, where samurais were the best technology, and samurais were better than a tank, and samurais were better than a gun. And so we have these giant Gundam samurais, and these teenagers are samurais inverted. So samurais are actually the ultimate weapon, right? And so that is not at all what I am not a Japanese person dealing with Japanese history. So that is not the influences of my book. My book is much more about I guess I didn't go to war. I didn't turn 18 and go to war. And so many giant robot stories are about that.
Yeah.
I turned 18 and got a job. I was being a teenager struggling. Honestly, one of the things is going to be interesting with your guys' audience is you have adult listeners, right? So I'm talking about kids material, but with adult listeners, which I think frees me up to talk a little bit about some of my earlier influences. My first book was called A Film About Billy, and it's about a suicide epidemic. So it's going to be some talk about suicide, folks. Reach out for help and all that good stuff, like legitimately.
To be fair, that subject's featured in one of our recommendations later. So
it's a serious serious thing. And so I basically started doing comics early on because I was struggling with a story about two different friends of mine that took their lives before they turned 18, that didn't know each other from different parts of the country, just totally independently. And so this book is for much younger readers, and I do not at all address that, but I do address like struggling with something that like you don't even always talk about, and it was like very hard to deal with and is in your past. Like their high school getting smashed when they were there, you know? Yeah. And so that is like the idea of getting into a giant robot is like the ultimate adulthood. Like you have all the power now, and like what are you going to do with that? And you can be tempted to be petty with that power.
It's almost like suddenly you're an adult, isn't it? In a way.
Yeah. And so it's just really, it's about muddling through those feelings and figuring out how to, function and do your best, I guess, right?
Yeah, because I think so many stories, especially now with like modern comics and stuff, back in the day when you became a hero or when you became anything, you were the end product. You were, the person who doesn't make mistakes. They've gotten to this point. They are the hero. And now, because through deconstruction and tropes and all this kind of thing, so many more modern characters are, here's what everyone sees, but they're just trying to get through their day.
Yeah.
And you have that with a lot of the adults. But I think with like teen characters, especially, and there's so many sort of, whether it be books, TV shows, everything is now sort of like showing the absolute trauma of being a teenager and in society. So you add that into a role where you're supposed to be a grown-up, and there's almost endless possibilities for narratives and character exploration, because this is more of a character exploration book, would you say?
Yeah, and I mean, the truth is, I'm also struggling with the idea of being a hero. Like, I, as a writer, find it difficult to write heroes because it's hard to believe in them, right? At least from my perspective. And so, it really depends on like the characters' interactions. But I am trying to, push these characters towards being heroes in a way that I will genuinely believe when it gets there.
Yeah, I think when we hit the sort of real life situation in comic books in any kind of fiction, it's not about heroes, it's about people who do heroic things. I think it's almost like a better definition to the way I feel about it, because no one wears a badge and has a job being a hero in the real world. It's not like superheroes, but we do occasionally have to step up and do things, and that is a heroic incident, isn't it? Or a heroic thing, which often will surprise someone even. They didn't know they're capable of it.
Yeah.
And the weight of that responsibility. That's like when you're in these sort of positions, we think like a Superman. Happy Superman Day for anyone who recently had it.
Yeah.
But the responsibility of being that and putting that on a kid's shoulders, like, why? We sort of gloss over the fact that like with great power comes great responsibility. All of that happening to Peter Parker, that's a massive thing for him to have to deal with.
And kids wear things on their sleeves, as well. The reaction even to that is a massive thing. Sorry, Dan, what were you going to say?
I was going to throw in an anecdote about. I'm not a hero by any shot, but like I was on a packed commuter train years ago.
Here we go.
And a call came down like, "Is there a first aider on the train?" Like going down. And like a voice in my head said, "You're a first aider." And I was like, "Yeah, me." and I had to go up, and like someone is fucking having a fit, and I had to like try and help him out.
What a
But
man.
that is
What a guy.
It's that kind of like you're like, oh,
there
fuck.
are heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to step up. I stole his wallet as he was fitting, obviously.
Occasionally I ring him up if I need an extra 20 quid. But no, I know. But you did the right thing, man. Very few people don't. I think there's a sort of social anxiety that stops some people doing it. They're afraid of being embarrassed, aren't they? But if you are, you got to do something, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does take a certain sort of person. And of course, when we're making comics or making entertainment, we're focusing on those people who are making choices to do things.
But that choice moment is the thing, isn't it? Of kind of, I've got to step up. And it's interesting when like the characters you're kind of building up, when they get to that moment, it's going to be really interesting, the process they go through to make that decision and see them come to that.
Yeah. I think that's one way a lot of people think about storytelling, is you're building up to this moment that like someone could whiff really hard. And there's a phrase I like a lot that comes, I think, from like Pixar, maybe, is story is expectation plus uncertainty, which I think is a really good fundamental, which is like helpful to think about when you're writing. And so you need people to have two ways it might go, you know?
Yeah. And there is a thing that's that I always think about with the stories and the things that I read. And it's always choice and consequence, because every choice has a consequence. We think of consequence being like a bad thing, but no, it's just whatever the reality of that choice is, the next thing that happens.
Got to have a consequence,
You know, it's like dominoes, isn't it? Which must be fascinating with like for your characters, Daniel, to sort of like, you know, because they're making wild swings, big choices, and obviously what's coming down the pipe with the story as it goes on.
They're a right noisy rabble as well, aren't they? To sort of control and focus what you're talking about with that storyline, because they're forever all over the place, aren't they? Almost like they're falling off the page with just rowdiness, you know?
Yeah, they fight a lot. They're bickery, like, which is my experience of a lot of friendships. Is a lot more disagreement than
you're listening to us earlier.
But yeah, I'm trying to remember to put in the nice moments too in this.
Yeah, no, I get you, man. And that's the benefit of us getting to know them. That's the benefit of us knowing them. And you know, when they do get to that like big, you know, crossroads, you know, where the road forks in two directions, you think it actually plays on you, didn't you? You think you're worried for what they're going to do. I think.
Yeah.
That brings up an interesting point, though, narratively. It's for a lot of us creating these moments, creating these stories, creating the negative times or the times of tension, of heat and stuff. It's almost they're easier to come up with, you know, and some writers forget to think about the nicer moments, the softer moments, which I think does a disservice a lot of the time. Was it trickier for you to think of those softer, more genuine, heartfelt moments rather than? Did you have like a long list of, well, here's the bad moments? Oh, I've only got two nice things.
Well, I guess I don't tend to think of it in that way. I do try to think of it like a rhythm. In my first book, I had an extremely strict page limit, so some of the things that established kind of nicer moments got edited out, which is why I did like a teaser book. So like on my Kickstarter, not only am I doing Friends in Stormy Weather, I'm also have like a cheaper little zine book called Goodbye Cloudtown High, which is the story of the two main character girls from the first book, the day they become friends, the day their school actually gets smashed. And so that has a really kind of nice touching moment where, you know, the forming of a friendship occurs. And that got edited out of the book because I was like running out of pages. And so I was like, we don't need the nice moment. It would have been maybe. Okay, yeah. But no, I think of it like ups and downs, right? You want to have you want it to be a roller coaster ride. Like there's this really great quote by the creator of Amulet. Forget his name. But he says drawing a graphic novel is like building a roller coaster. It's extremely time intensive and difficult to do, and it takes like a fraction of the amount of time to build to ride, and then it's over. But if it's good enough, people will revisit it. And I think that metaphor of a comic story like a roller coaster ride is also good for thinking of the good moments, the bad moments. If it's like endlessly tough, it gets frustrating as a reader.
Yeah.
So you want
or unenjoyable. It's just not enjoyable, is it? Yeah.
And also you create an expectation without the uncertainty because it's just going to keep going bad.
Yeah. It stopped me reading many books. Like when people say this book is fantastic, but it's so bleak. I don't. Yeah. I'm not in the. I'm not in the mood to read that.
Yeah. Never watched The Road again. I saw it once. It's enough for me. The one question for you, man, is and I was thinking about this it relates to story structure and style. Is first off to ask you, why did you go with young girls? Right. Is it the vulnerability that you feel they have, where if it was a boy's story, perhaps it would be more sort of rambunctious,
gung ho, and
yeah. Well, okay, I have a couple of feelings about how it ended up, but the honest truth is, it started as a boy's story, and that character got edited out.
Right, interesting.
Ended up still in there, and so my original pitch it was a little bit of like a teenage love triangle with the previous male character being the Dolphin Brain Boy. The Dolphin Brain Boy got reintroduced. The kid with like stitches on his head in this story.
I remember.
As a much smaller character. In the original version, he was the pivotal role. It had to be edited down, and my editor was like, "This character does like the story could function without this character effectively." Because the main drama happened to be between the
How did you feel when they said that? Because you must have been thinking in a certain trajectory, and when an editor sort of says this can work without it, did you suddenly go, I never thought about it like that?
I found it really enjoyable in a way like I feel like I've been playing tennis against a wall for 10 years, and then I had someone else to play with. And so
like that.
Yeah, I love stories. I feel much more capable of redoing everything, and I could have rewritten this book infinity times in infinity different
of course. Yeah.
So I did enjoy having someone that was like, no, do this, or like help me focus on certain things. Because they never actually said do this. They said, could you not do something? And then I would have to figure out how to make it all work without that thing. And
I find that sort of thing quite inspiring. I find that problem solving you get asked. So the Falpy I work with, he'll go, could you do something like this? And then it almost like sparks something in you that, the cogs start working, don't they, I think?
Yeah, and I mean, it's nice to run up against other problems or limitations, whether it's a person or something you set for yourself, because it keeps you from just doing the exact same thing effectively.
Yeah.
I get you, man. And the other thing I wanted to ask about is your there seems to be no fear in you in making characters unlikable to a certain extent. Yeah. So I don't want to say almost like fallible, and sometimes almost annoying from a reading point of view. What's your thoughts on that?
I am interested in trying harder to make some characters more likable. Right. Because I find that to be a challenge. I don't know. I think that so many of the favorite characters I have, even in stuff I consumed as a relatively young person, the character didn't start out awesome, but they grew into something better over time.
Makes them more interesting as well, I think.
It makes them more interesting, and it's the world. It's hopefully me. It's hopefully the people I interact with. Hopefully we're slowly getting less annoying and better some way.
Wait to become a 50-something-year-old man. You become really annoying then, Dan, as I am.
Can't wait.
Just fast forward them into the future. And
but the difference is when you get to that point, you don't care anymore.
And you actually enjoy it.
Yeah, you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill quote all over, isn't it? We mentioned about artistic influences. I've got two regarding narrative and structure.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Maybe a bit of look. I would say Evangelion a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It was just like, sorry, I threw my phone across the room because it was vibrating. I thought it was going to land on something soft, but this is why I'm not a basketball player. Yeah, no, for sure. I had got a Hollywood agent briefly because comics, for a second, everyone needed one. I don't know why. But they were pitching it as Evangelion meets Steven Universe.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right.
But,
That's a rather embarrassing shortcut, but yeah,
for sure.
Maybe a little Attack on Titan, would you say?
So the one piece of teenage fan mail I got said the same thing. I have watched Attack on Titan since then. I think that Attack on Titan probably has a lot of similar influences to me.
There's one character the character's wearing like a kind of rig, like one of the scouts wear in that. Is that on purpose?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, for sure. I did draw that after seeing Attack on Titan. So between the graphic novel and the one you read, I have consumed Attack on Titan. I did. I was like, I would like. They are in a giant robot. There's going to be a time, potentially, next chapter. Let's just throw this out there that they might need to get out of the robot. It's not tall enough for a parachute, but you would need to get out somehow with like a rappelling gear, emergency something. So I was like, and then I was like, what is cool looking emergency gear? So I just Googling mountain climbing stuff for sure.
Oh man, that's great. That works. Yeah.
It's interesting you thought that problem a good section in.
Yeah. Well, and also theoretically in the world it makes sense for them to think about it because in the first graphic novel, the reason the teenager has to take on the giant robot pilot is the original pilot almost dies because it's a kid's book. His brain is in a jar by the end of the thing.
Right.
But because they didn't have enough safety stuff. Like this is also in contrast to every other giant robot comic, like where all of the funding of the military is going into this. This is very like no one funded this. This is poorly made giant robot stuff. And so the first guy totally could have survived if there were some safety considerations. So now that they have a teenager in, they installed some safety.
Very cool. So is it mostly manga as an influence, Daniel? Is there any other Western comics in there? So I was exposed to, I would say my first two comics I ever read, despite my dad doing kids books. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, in eastern United States. Is that where they eat cats and dogs up that way?
That's Ohio, but yeah, the first factory came back to the U.S. and now everyone wants more factories. I don't know.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, all good. Yeah. No, but I did live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for a long time, which is another Rust Belt city and an amazing comics town.
Right.
But yeah, when I was in Kutztown, my neighbors got ElfQuest from the mall. So my first
Wendy Penny, love it. Yeah.
And then my second one was some like older teenagers got me Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, also from the mall. And so those were probably my first two big influences. And then going to Pittsburgh, I saw tons of zines and indie comics like Kevin Huizinga, and then so Jim Rugg, who did Street Angel, is a friend of mine, but he was an early cartoonist I met out there, and so I definitely read that a bazillion times.
I can see that, mate. Yeah, I can see. Yeah. What's the book he did? Is it Plain Jane's? Is there a bit of that there somewhere?
He drew that, yeah. And Street Angel, Aphrodisiac, and a bunch of new stuff he's doing.
Yeah, I love his stuff, man. Yeah, he's. I met him at Heroes a couple of times. Good guy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing. God, mate. Sorry.
I did. So when I wrote my first novel, A Film About Billy, and I wrote screenplay format chunks in it for certain scenes that just most people don't read screenplays. And so I was finding that people were having trouble reading it. And I was considering adding comics. And I hated college. But my dad was a college professor and really wanted me to get a degree. So I kept on being like, I took my last year of high school at college. So I already was a quarter of the way through. And then I was like, I don't want to go to college. My dad was like, try a semester. And I tried a semester. I was like, I want to drop out. He's like, one more. I was like, I want to drop out. He's like, you're halfway, just one more. I was like, I want to drop out. He's like, study abroad. It's like dropping out, but you'll still be in school. And so I went to Japan and I had this book I was working on, and I don't speak Japanese. I practiced a little bit, but that was really when I was most surrounded by manga and saw these light novels. I didn't know. I thought they were just copies of the comic, but a mixture of words and pictures, and so that got me drawing my first comics in that book. So yeah, lot of manga influence and anime influence basically from that trip. And then honestly, I've read more manga since like COVID lockdown than I had in the whole rest of my life, just because I lived in a tiny house with a whole lot of people, and people would be annoyed if you took a book out when you're supposed to be hanging out, but they're all on Instagram. So I had to download the manga app, and then I could read comics instead of being on Instagram, and no one cares.
And
much better for you. Yeah.
That's an interesting thing to think about as well. That like during the lockdown times when everyone was consuming everything, books, films, video games, whatever it is. Talk about like an area of comics where there is a sea of content, and every series has 150 volumes of something. Do you know what I mean? And then like, oh, I need something to pass the time. Where better than to start with One Piece from book 1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's probably, I mean, we don't think about it, but the pandemic probably cultivated an awful lot of fan bases.
Well, it's also around the time that Netflix put a lot of anime on their app, didn't they? Which I think is what really was it Demon Slayer or Devil Slayer? Demon Slayer. Really. That's why I think a lot of that stuff just ballooned.
Yeah. Well, those things are interlinked because remember, people didn't know if you were going to get to have actors in a place together again.
Yeah.
So everyone was trying to figure out where, again, there was already content sitting there. And as someone that worked at a comic shop, I worked at Mission Comics in San Francisco for a bit.
Oh, cool.
The thing that's great about like the anime to manga pipeline is when you run out of episodes of the anime, the manga picks up right there because the anime is just copying it.
Yeah.
So you get addicted to stories, you care about the characters, and then you're like, how do I know what happens next? Well, it's right there.
Which is the opposite of what Western comics do.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely fucking
there's no connection, is there?
Yeah. It's mad. Yeah.
Apparently, the exception of Walking Dead was close enough that at the comic shop, people would be able to know what the story was happening.
Yeah, I'd say something like maybe Sweet Tooth. There's a couple of things that are.
It's Invincible.
If Last Man.
I don't watch the animated series.
I haven't watched it.
I haven't watched the second season, but I think it's fairly faithful.
Okay.
Invincible.
Yeah.
He was a bit of an influence too, actually. The guy who did Sweet Tooth, what's his name?
Jeff Lemire.
Jeff Lemire. Just because I had a single floppy issue of one of his books someone had given me randomly when I was a teen. I just thought it was beautiful.
Yeah. It's so different, isn't it?
Story.
Yeah, it really is.
But so heartfelt. He can do like heartfelt storytelling, like.
And then he can just switch up and do great DC stories, which is a good thing about, I think. Well, let's talk a little bit about what format you worked in and stuff, because one of the things we found really interesting is the way you switch styles and even mediums within it. So we've got almost like a collage use of, for people who haven't seen it, there's a lot of the commentary that goes on in it. It looks like it's cut out of an exercise book, a kid's exercise book, and written on.
That's great.
And there's also a section where I don't know why, I'm just obsessed with this page where you perform a black hole in the middle of a page. Yeah. Did you want to talk about the approach you took on there?
Well, one of the things basically is, so I pitched a few books to, major graphic novel publishers, and a lot of them are kind of tightening the belt right now. And so I'm like, well, if I have to do it myself, I get to do it myself. So all of the things that are a little weird or unusual, like I kind of wanted to lean back into my like zine roots and do whatever I wanted, because there's no reason not to do that. I am really proud of the falling into a black hole moment as this concept of like what is a rip into dimension, especially when you're reading fiction, like you're reading paper.
But it's presented so well on a page as if there's a hole in. I haven't got it in front of me, but it's almost as if there's a hole in an exercise book page. Is that right?
And I would say I wanted to mention this because it's one of those things that I was very proud of it. I felt very unique and clever. And then also an acquaintance of mine book just came out from Fantagraphics, has a almost identical page in it. But that's not uncommon in this world. So I think we both get to be proud of it. But
yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, there is also I think people's relationship to their own journal is a really good way to explore the concept of loneliness and like falling into yourself when you don't know who you are anymore. And especially as a teenager, like one of the chief struggles for me and many people as a teenager is finding out or deciding what your identity is, you know? This whole idea, like just be who you are, but you don't actually know who you are
exactly.
yet. And as people that are older than teenagers, I'm assuming, we maybe remember just like for me the orange parachute pants I was wearing, not necessarily like the internal struggle. I just see like the embarrassing photo that reminds me I didn't know who I was.
We've all got them, mate. We've all searched each other. We were aware of all each other's fallibles on this call. The other thing you do is you use the opinion of others to impress the character on the reader of the person you're using. So, for example, in this you've got school reports, or it's almost like detention reports, haven't you?
They're
Which
great.
I found really
love those
interesting.
bits.
Yeah, because she's always getting in trouble. Not always her own fault. And then you get these sort of pages of either about her or someone else she's had a problem with. Did you want to just mention that as well?
Yeah, I don't really remember how the idea of that came up. You know, necessity is the mother of invention a little bit. And because I'm giving myself kind of strict deadlines despite having like a day job, and sometimes I'm doing another pitch while I'm drawing this book, right? So there'll be days where I'm like, oh man, it's Saturday. I owe my half dozen Patreons 2 pages, and I'm like, this might be an interesting thing to do.
Okay.
But it also once you do it, then you're like, oh, this is a way to. It actually does create a break in the story and create a context, and then it makes more sense with the notebook. And then I didn't plan on making. So the Kickstarter funding is for a spiral bound like kids notebook version of the book.
Yeah, for those who don't realise, we haven't mentioned it yet. On the 1st of May, you've got a Kickstarter drop in for this project.
Yeah. And again, you can just read it for free. It looks way better in the printed book. It's a unique time at the moment where like prices are fluctuating day by day. I have to order the books before I launch the Kickstarter, so I know for a fact how much they will cost.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
But
spiral bound.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
With a wire spiral bound, like a notebook. There's going to be hopefully spot gloss on these little fake stickers, so it looks like they're stickers. And so, just like in storytelling, like every decision cascades into other interesting choices. Like starting with the notebook scrap, because I just remembered there was something that did happen when I was in school where teachers would say you didn't have to share something in class, and then they would force people to share it in class, which is awful if you're a student, right? And so I was like trying to figure out a way to catch people up with this world quickly and then jump into feeling sympathetic for this girl who has been a bully in the past. And that's where I came up with the idea. She was summarizing what happened in the last book in her own journal and then forced to share it, where basically the teacher's bullying her. So within a few pages, like that's the thing is like stories is this magic world where you express like abstract truths of the heart. And it's also a little bit weird math where you're like, okay, I need to catch people up, I have this many pages. How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And so I caught people up. I was like, oh, she's writing a notebook. Why don't I have scraps of notebook paper be the narration? And then now that I have scraps of notebook paper, why don't I have other little inserts? Now that I have all that, why don't I have the print version of the book look like a notebook? And it's exciting.
Brilliant, man. Yeah. I love that. I mean, when you think about it, comics have been doing that for a long time. You know, occasionally, you used to get in Spider-Man, you used to get a page of the Daily Bugle, didn't you, appear and stuff like that. And it does assist sometimes in just sort of reading through page after comics. You think, oh, this is cool, and it also gives the reader a little like retrospective think about what's going on. I think you come at things from a different angle, and it helps you realise and miss. We all miss story points, don't we, when we're reading stuff? Oh, he's really dead. I didn't realise that. That sort of thing goes on. But when you get the teacher saying something, you're like, oh, okay, right, I get that. It's the different perspective that works to obtain the story. Yeah, definitely. I really like that.
Also, a playfulness that I've been enjoying in comics. There's something that I think as CGI has gotten better, and therefore like a lot of what comics used to be, as an exploration of space or whatever, like doing things with imagination that film couldn't do yet. Now film can do that, and I think I'm wearing a T-shirt by this guy Michael Sweater, and it said "Comic books ruined my life" or something.
Yes,
I love it.
Yeah.
He has
Me
this
too.
comic. He has this comic called "Everything Sucks" that I really enjoy. Silver Sprocket out here puts it out.
Oh, okay.
But they have like sticker sheets in the back and like posters that pull out, and it's a little bit like half a comic book, half the back of a cereal box with like a toy inside, and it's for adults. It's called Everything Sucks. But
you're right, man. We got to pivot. We really have to pivot, don't we? Like you say, that whole thing about CGI and all this sort of thing. Now you can do anything. You can have an army attacking someone now, which in the old days you couldn't really have in film. But now I think, you're right. We have to pivot, and it's always at these moments when we become the most inventive.
Yeah. It's back to that necessity is the mother of invention.
Absolutely.
Or we'll fail. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, cool.
Oh,
and is it in you somewhere, Dan, to do like something? Have you got that serial killer comic you want to do now? That more like grounded. Do you want to do an Eros comic? Come on, I know it's in you. Come on,
No, my first book was a little more adult because I was a teenager when I wrote it. I definitely have like a cartoon animal murder comic I did. That's called that's out there. All of my friends are grown-up indie cartoonists, so there's a lot of like I did a signing yesterday, and everyone to the left and right of me was just like very adult stuff. And
really,
so,
okay. Can you name a few or contemporaries out there?
Yeah. So this dude Nero just had his Kickstarter finish for a book called Heavy Meadow.
Okay.
So he's very proud of that coming out. The guy to my right is someone I keep telling to reach out to you because you will love his stuff. It's Kurt Burdick. He does Death of Power series that has been really successful on Kickstarter. He's on volume 7 is coming out next, or issue 7. Kayfabe folks reviewed the first 2 and really
nice.
Nice one. Okay.
But yeah, it's a Death of Superman spoof that is extremely brutal and disgusting.
That sounds good.
In ways that I'm pretty sure you will be extremely up your guys' alley. And then Apple, she does Apple Comics. She is one of my former coworkers over at Mission Comics, and classic Bay Area person. She barely has enough time to sleep between all of her jobs, but she's still making cool, interesting comics that I think you guys will also like.
Cool. Good stuff, man. Yeah, it's nice to hear that it's a nice little vibrant scene in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's bumping back up like the true, and there's also a different generation. So like Jean Yang, Ten Pham, and Brianna, whose new book from Fantagraphics also has similar themes to mine. You might want to check out.
Oh, okay. The thing is, we hear about San Francisco because of Crumb.
Oh right, yeah.
And Zap and all this sort of thing, and selling comics out of a pram. They were pushing up and down Haight-Ashbury and stuff. It's a bit of a dream world. I'd love to go there and just see these places.
If you want an interesting story about my friend Apple and Robert Crumb, I did a YouTube video where she had a plan to meet Robert Crumb by making her first zine, and it worked. It doesn't make any sense. So there's a YouTube video up online of just Google.
Well, as I understand it, he's been turned down for SPX. That's what they said on Comic Books Are Burning in Hell. And is it Nadell, the dude who's written the book on him? Yeah, I think he might have. It's just a shame because he is the daddy of it all down there, isn't he?
Yeah.
I know he's got his problems. I'm not going to say he ain't got his problems.
But, seems to fall in and out of favour, doesn't he? Like 1 minute he's kind of like,
He ain't getting any younger.
Once upon a time I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you had mentioned that you don't really you'd prefer sometimes not to have to know about the creators, and like that's another thing I like about manga, and
it's true, man.
I mean, Tokyo's the Hollywood of comics. Like they export more comics, they make more comics, they sell more comics than anywhere else, and they also have insane fans that will like threaten people's lives because they killed a character that they like. So there's a reason. There's some.
Or we refer to them as proper fans.
Real fans.
There's some reason for that, and also there's just the ability to be anonymous when you're not going out and having to sell your own stuff as much because you have an industry, right? But it is one of those weird things. Sometimes, like art is so specific, people are so specific. They're not 100% the same thing. So even when I meet people that I like, and I also like their stuff, it does sometimes depreciate the value of that thing that was just this isolated kind of diamond in the world that I was like,
that's true, man.
This is something I love.
Yeah.
But I don't blame them for getting out. Like, I'm here talking to you guys because there is some chance someone will listen to this and read something of mine, and it'd be the most important thing for them for a moment. Yeah. And that's the whole point of me making the thing, you know?
I mean,
that's well put,
I mean,
well
like,
put.
a lot of the time with this show, we've discovered the book, and then we've met the creator, or we've spoken to the creator or something, and it's been so rewarding when we're like, oh, this book was so good, and when we spoke to them, they were really good and really nice.
We come off the call and go, thank God, he was a good guy.
Yeah,
you know, that means so much to me, that book. You know, you know, if I met Matt Wagner and he was a massive dickhead, it would ruin me. It would ruin me.
Yeah, because you constantly, we live in a world where everyone's saying, don't meet your heroes, or that sort of thing. That's a mentality. And even though I'm not necessarily saying heroes, but just creators you're fans of, or just anyone like that, you know. Yeah. And I think there's a real truth to what you're saying, that like, you know, I love the discovery of the new book, because if you meet the person first and then the book comes next, has the person affected your reading of the book?
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
And that's built into the dynamics of selling a book these days, unfortunately. I mean, it dates back. It's not a recent thing, you know. It happened before the internet. You know, you've only got to look at Stan Lee building up the personalities, giving them all jaunting, you know, and all this sort of, giving them all personalities. And then we had the growth of the comic convention, and then we had the internet, which only times it by 1,000, didn't it? You know, sort of thing. And I've experienced it. I've often talked about my first encounter with Chris Claremont almost made me walk away from comics. You know, and it was just so awful to young me, you know, early teenage me, that I walked around a corner and bumped into Alan Moore, who asked me if I was all right, and it honestly he got me back into comics in that 10 minutes where I've decided to walk away, you know. And I can only think how people now feel about, for example, something like the Neil Gaiman allegations, which are that times a million, aren't they? You know, and this cult of personality can definitely hurt your appreciation of the medium, appreciation of what's going on there, which is so sad almost. I think you're right when you say that manga's that ideal, because I do not have a Scooby-Doo who these people are who create manga.
Yeah, they could be superstars. They could be absolute...
Or they could be some weird bloke who lives under a tree. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter to me. Do you know what I mean? And I just kind of wish that happened again.
Yeah. I mean that's the problem with dealing with people, you know? Like,
no, massively. Yeah.
And I've met some publishers from Japan that were wondering why, when a Japanese creator ends a successful series, fans don't often follow them to the next series, which is, I think, the flip side of that coin, where
that's true.
We built this kind of personality concept for creators in part as a necessity, that for creators to take people with them when they left big companies, you know. I don't know.
It's almost something like you know, the image revolution and continuing, like, you know, with you get your Hickman, and they go on and they're making more money from their own series because people have followed them. You know, it's almost like with Western comics, people are more likely to follow the creator and follow them into battle.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? I used to be 100% I follow the character, but now Hickman's coming back onto an X project soon, isn't he? And I'm like, oh, I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God someone's going to save the X-Men again. So.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be like sort of more of a trusted hand at the tiller, that when they changed creative teams, the characters would sort of be some semblance of what they were before. But now it's like when new creative teams come in, it's radically new directions often.
Yeah.
So
So I think the answer, the big subject comes out of that. If you're creative, be nice to people, because I've had like serious emotional moments in my life where I've met creators and it just been the best thing. When I was in Heroes last year, Cliff had to say to me, "Are you all right?" As I walked away from one table, Jim Starlin's table, and I was thinking, it's like the best thing ever. The dude was like the nicest dude.
that's great.
Yeah. Oh, magical.
Speaking of
if
like,
you're not a creator,
go on.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and if you're not a creator, be nice to people if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good general advice.
Just don't be a dick, everyone. That's what you're gonna learn from this episode. But speaking of like conventions and stuff and that sort of circuit, and you spoke about your local scene. What's it like in terms of? I mean, because especially solo creators, you create in a bubble. Do you know what I mean? There's you and your books and stuff, but you do. It benefits you to be part of a local scene if you're part of it, or make friends, connections, possibly conventions. What's that like for where you are? Because I mean, I know you've spoken about having some creators, but how often do you see them and conventions, etc.?
Yeah. So, I would like to say that I used to live in Pittsburgh, PA, where I ran a writers co-op, and when I was young, we had a big messed up house that like 60 people came and left, like over the course of 6 years, would come in town, like do readings, crash with us. It was both awesome and awful at the same time. Like didn't have heat a lot of the times, and there's winter in Pittsburgh. So both, like that was something that me and my friends did to help the scene exist there. And everywhere you go, the scene exists because people did that. Like there's a punk guy I knew in Columbus, Ohio, speaking of Ohio, who had a calendar he did called Columbus Sucks Because You Suck. And if you don't have a comic scene and you want one, work on that. You can do it. You as an individual, if you don't have friends doing comics, you can find there's a path. My understanding is the comic scene in the Bay Area has gone up and down over time. There's a current crew of people that are doing cool stuff. My friend Apple, again, she works at Mission Comics and works at a tattoo shop and is doing stuff there. We have a lot of good shops. It is one of the most expensive places in America, the Bay Area. So the comic shops that are here can feel like they're working, like maybe they're just banking rent, but their rent is, back in Pittsburgh where I lived, 1 year's rent of the comic shop that I used to go to in Pittsburgh is 1 month's rent. And for the comic shop I worked at in San Francisco. So they're both doing equally good based on their economy, but the San Francisco shop has to sell a year's worth of comics in a month because they are the same price. The comics cost the same both places, right? Yeah. So I would say it's an impressive comics town because of that. Because it's so expensive to be here, I do think it motivates people to try to figure out how it can be part of their job, I think. There is a crew of people that I think the crew of Tien Pham and Brianna and Brenna, and they all are school teachers. So they have summers off, and they all teach at a bunch of them teach at the same school, which is pretty effective way to do it. But yeah, I used to meet up every week. We used to have a Comics Accountability Club, which was basically every week you're just like, hey, this is what I'm going to do next week. And then did I do it? And then
someone would call you out on it, sort of saying, why didn't you do that? You said you were going to do that.
Yeah, because whoever didn't do it owed everyone else coffee. So
I like that. Yeah.
I highly recommend that. That's something I've done. In Pittsburgh, we had something called the Cool Off, where once a month everyone would come. It cost it was free to attend, $4 to vote, and everyone would say what they did last month. And half of the money and a little, I would super glue an action figure to a beer can or something, spray painted gold. And if you voted the coolest thing someone did that month, you'd get a thing.
Oh, wow. That is good, man.
That's cool. Yeah,
because you always have these sort of like these famous fan circles. There's like the Beguiling one, isn't there, with Seth and those guys, and we had the Fast Fiction crew in London in the '80s, and there's always these little pockets of fandom that become almost like worldwide known, I think, sometimes.
You know, and even if they don't become worldwide known, they do become something like special and unique, I think. So like I just got the comic you recommended in the episode where you reviewed Friends in Stormy Weather, the Cosmic Slop.
Oh, nice. Oh, good. He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Very cool looking. I really enjoy the art style. And to me, it does look influenced by, you know, the hip hop family tree, a little bit of Scioli stuff. And those, like when I was in Pittsburgh, those were just like the guys, the older generation of guys making stuff. And and it is cool that like they were like sharing how they did, you know, made their comics look old on Photoshop. They were like, you know, Jim Rugg did Aphrodisiac before Hip Hop Family Tree came out, and it's hard to imagine that was an influence on.
We used that technique on Hercules 1, that making the page look older, giving it that newsprint look. Yeah, definitely.
And from so that's, to me, that's a specific look that came from this little nook of people that were like friends and working together, and then it got exported and turned into something very different that is beautiful in its own right. Meanwhile, like me and my friends were doing something that looked a lot more like chicken scratchy kind of stuff at the time. Like early Noah Van Sciver had a similar look. We had a lot more like woodsy stuff. Like basically every Sunday we got together and would like draw and eat pierogies, and then once a month someone would staple a zine of everything we drew that month.
It's great hearing about these. Like, the zine crew in Leeds are the same. They get together regularly and make little comics, and that's great. I think that's and unfortunately with the sort of the drop in sales of mainstream comics and the raise in price, this is where we need to be these days. This is where all the originality and all the experimentation and all the future of comics comes from. These kind of
the comics community has become more of a community based thing, hasn't it?
It has to evolve.
Has to.
I would also say if people are like, especially if you're a young person in the middle of nowhere, like don't have access to a group of people doing this, like the Manga Plus app does have a creator section that you can just upload your stuff to. And like I put up an old comic on there just to see, and like a couple thousand people like read it. And like it's a place where, you know, these are people that are very into manga specifically. A lot of American and European creators want to make things that look indistinguishable from the current Japanese kind of comic style, which is fine. But I do think it's amazing that there's an app that huge volumes of comic readers are reading already. They're reading their favorite manga on it, and if they swipe over, they'll see random things a teenager made, like someone on it.
We can do that global comics to a certain extent as well. There's a sort of reply thing. The amount of times I've put a comment on a comic and the creators reply to it. Yeah, it's quite cool.
There's a forum on global comics you can go to and post your stuff and
I didn't know that.
Interact with people. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Same with like Spider Forest. If you kind of like in the Spider Forest community, like look at the webcomics, you can
because so many people are coming up through like the manga apps and the webtoons and you know so many things that like you know the crusty people like me would be like, I don't understand this. I've never read a comic scrolling downwards. I'm still trying to get my head around it. And fair play, but for a lot of people, that's their comics language. That is the way it is, and so many people are now comics being vertical. It's specifically for a generation. It's a generational thing as well, isn't it? You know, so it's not for anyone to sort of say this is wrong. This isn't how comics are done, because comics are always changing, and everyone's going to read comics in a completely different way.
But that's something you have to think about before you start drawing. You have a lot of choices,
especially if you're going to make something that you want to be a product or printed. I mean, because you can essentially do anything as a webcomic, can't you? You can break out formats. Every page could be different size, etc., etc. If you wanted to do that, but then if you wanted to make a book,
it's got to be a certain specification.
You have to think. I mean, you can still push the boundaries. But was that something that you were thinking about? Because this was obviously online as well. But was there always the books in the mind?
That's to have the ability to translate, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm still struggling with how to best do it, and in part because I want the double page spreads. I like the silly like folding out of the panels. I really enjoy that stuff. But it's also something I think about. So my most recent Kickstarter was like 10 years ago, and
Right.
I had coincidentally knocked out all my front teeth in a bicycle accident days
Right,
before
okay.
launch.
It's a bit of a strange marketing tactic, I've got to say, Daniel. That's a bit,
Tension seeking.
Yeah, I'm hoping this doesn't repeat itself. I don't think.
No.
I'm gonna be very careful.
Stay off the bike.
Wear a helmet.
My day job is on a bike, so I cannot not be on a bike. But it's a tricycle, so I'll be all right. I'm a pedicabber.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Helps balance cardio with sitting and drawing.
Yeah.
And some social skills, because after doing my first graphic novel, I could barely speak out loud to other people. That many hours alone. But yeah, when that came out, I tried to be smart about translating to online, like Tumblr at the time would have been where to put it. And but then the comic folded up like a calendar, and that just had there's yet to be a perfect translation for me. What works for both things? I would say that partially because a lot of people wanted to support because I happened to knock my teeth out. It did get a lot of notice.
Did you save them and give them away on a special tier?
I should have gone back and looked at them. No. If you want to see something slightly queasy making, you can watch the old Kickstarter video for that Kickstarter. It was called Top of the Line, and I'm like talking funny in it, and they're like, if you think I'm talking funny, and like it was bad. I had so many stitches. But I got a gold tooth now, which is great.
Nice.
We're gangster. Yeah.
Trouble of knocking them out. You should get something for it.
Yeah.
But I would say the Kickstarter, right? A few hundred people subscribed to a 6-issue series. I got it was like $4,000, which was great. Like 4,000 profit. It was like $9,000 Kickstarter or something. And in Pittsburgh, PA, I was living off of like $500 a month. So that was the first time I was, a professional cartoonist for a few months. And then I put it online, and many more people read it, but it didn't feel the same because those people weren't, invested the $2-3 in it. Like it feels different when someone puts money on the line and has it on their dresser and like talks to you about it. But my current webcomic is a email newsletter. So if you happen to be subscribed, please do just hit reply and tell me what you think, or be like, this is spelled wrong, or like do better, like whatever. It's good to.
Is that something you get much, or would you like more of?
I would like more of it. I basically only my parents are like, you spelled things wrong.
Well, he's a college professor. You'd expect that when you.
Yeah, and a librarian. Yeah.
Yeah, but we do need that interaction though, beyond the bubble, don't you? Even if it's just.
It's good and bad. We get loads of lovely replies about episodes, but then occasionally someone will say, I'll get an email that says, I haven't listened to the episode yet, but I think you talk about this thing. And I'm like, fucking listen, you find out.
He's not always that aggressive.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, he is.
That's how I feel anytime someone refers to the book Infinite Jest. Like almost never has someone read it when they compare something else to it, which is fine. But consider
it's just like War and Peace. Have you ever read War and Peace? You haven't, have you? No. Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Good.
So obviously the Kickstarter is on its way, and you mentioned the newsletter stuff. So people can sign up. Is 1st of May is their actual launch?
1st of May is launch. Kickstarter. Search Friends in Stormy Weather. You'll get it. You can also find me on various social media as Bean Can Dan, like a can of beans, Dan. StudioBeanCan.com is where the free newsletter is.
Where did that name come from? I got to ask you that.
Okay, so I I was traveling the country, living in a van, as you do. It's a big country, and the only real public space in the world is parking spaces in America. So I was doing that. The coolest nickname anyone had ever given me, I thought, was Streetcar. Someone had started calling me Streetcar. I was like, I'm going to try out this cool nickname. I was trying it out as I traveled, and this lady at this like puppet retreat. I ended up on a puppet retreat on this island.
This got sexy quickly.
And also, here's his next book already. So yeah.
And this woman was like, "What was your name, Bean Can?" And I was just like, that is way more accurate to who I am. I'm not streetcar. I'm closer to a bean can. So
everyone wants to be a streetcar, but we're all bean cans, aren't we?
Did she say it, or did someone else say it for her? Do you know what I
mean? He's doing a puppet motion with his hand. No, she said it. It was an interesting time. Yeah.
Did you have sex with her, Daniel?
No.
Oh, see, that would have been the perfect ending.
What about the puppet? No. So it's easy to remember. Bean Can Dan. There you go.
Bean Can Dan. Like StudioBeanCan.com. And the Kickstarter's coming out. It's going to be great. But also, if you don't want to give me money but want to read my comics, I appreciate that also.
Oh, I think and thank you.
We dig your generosity.
Thank you for saying that as well.
Thanks, man.
I think.
Yeah.
But your newsletter. How can people sign up for that?
Just StudioBeanCan.com. You just put in your email. It'll ask you some questions. You can answer them or not. The questions are like, do you want to be a creator? Do you just want the comics? Like, I just want to get a vibe of who's signing up.
Fair enough.
Oh, nice.
Like, you guys, I would like to say also thank you to you and like everyone that puts in the effort to promote comic stuff, because, I had 1 year's worth of YouTube videos up so far weekly. It is a lot of work to do anything. Nobody realizes how much effort other people are putting into these things. So,
we enjoy it. We get sent comics like this, so that's
exactly. We get to read.
It's a waste of pleasure, man.
Yeah. So go discover Cloudtown and Daniel, and you won't look back. And and then read it, and then email him about it, because he's asked for it, and he can't blame us for it. He said it on this show.
Absolutely.
Write him a fucking essay. We get those.
No, don't do that. Write him something nice, because you've been awesome, Dan. Right. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
How good was that? Another good one in the books. Another great creator to add to us.
Town.
Oh, nice, Dan. That's very good. See what you did there. Yeah. Look at him. He's so pleased with himself, Tony.
He's always happy.
Well, I'm trying to kind of achieve the lofty heights that you set.
Wow. Andrew's trying to butter me up. Wow. Why is that satire?
That's not satire.
I thought you've been sarcastic.
No.
He's being nice to me, Tony. Why is that?
Was that meme someone stuck in the channel about satire this week? You see that one?
No.
Yeah.
Is that on the Slack group? The wonderful Slack group that you can join. Much like guests, past, present, future, will be joining. Much like a lot of our listeners are. There's a wonderful Slack community. For those who don't know, Slack's like a Discord, Teams-like sort of server. We have basically used it for our own comics-based needs.
We've taken it over.
Yeah, and there's loads of channels on different sort of subjects. Get in touch with us. We'll add you to it, and you can get involved. Keep the discussion going on this episode, as well as lots of other stuff coming forward.
I just found that meme. So there's two blokes. There's a doctor sitting there with a patient. He says, "So how long have you been coping with it? How have you been coping with everything?" And the patient says, "Oh, with sarcasm mostly." "Has that been working?" "Yeah, it's been working great."
And it works in an audio medium. That's how you know. It's all good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, we've got some comics to recommend. But before that, what else is there for people to add to their list? Etc.
I've got a few. Thanks to Cliff for sending out a really gorgeous little zine he made. Some of which the Slackers have received. I think you two are getting one soon. Find him at CG Cumber on all the socials. Thanks to Strange Apparitions, Alex, Nick, and Rob Hardingham, who was there for a good chat. We went for a coffee afterwards. Good Friday, everyone goes to Mass, don't they, or whatever they do. I went to a garden centre in Spalding, to the comic shop, Strange Apparitions, and bought a shitload of books and comics, hundreds of pounds worth. May the 2nd is our next drink and draw. Everyone is welcome. The link will be in the Slack or available to you in the next couple of weeks, or if you just drop me a note, I'll send you the link, or one of us will. Come along, honestly. You don't even have to have your camera on. You can just come along and listen. We just talk shit. People draw. You can show what you're drawing if you want, but you don't have to. Cartoon County is a regular meet-up and interview show that you can attend in person or you can visit it via Zoom. It's based in Brighton, but you go in and have a look at the Zoom. If you're in the Slack, Simon Russell normally posts it in there, but it's available elsewhere. 28th of this month celebrates the 50th birthday of the interview with the regular host, Alex Fitch, who's also a DJ on Resonance FM. You can follow along by going to the website cartooncounty.com. The Glasgow Looking Glass comic is on its 200th anniversary, and it's got a Kickstarter going to celebrate it with a comic coming out with a lot of people who you'll have been on here, all you'll know about. It was one of the world's first comic publications, and it claims to have featured the first use of a word balloon. So go to Kickstarter and look for Glasgow Looking Glass comic. And I think it's got a few days left. So if you listen to this on the day release, you've got a few days left to go and back it.
Nice. Dan, what have you got?
I'll start off with the classic Lawless, 24th, 25th of May.
Yep.
Doubletree by Hill and Hotel Bristol, B51 6NJ. So we've got about a month left to go before we get that event. We've got High Vis Comic Con, Saturday, 21st of June 2025, Kings Heath, Birmingham, UK. I'm part of the Facebook group on that, and there's been some postings on guests and some of the other bits and bobs. That looks very interesting, so do go check that out. We've got the last couple of days on, to be honest, comics, the Drycleaner, an electrifying tale of vengeance, organised crime, and ninjas. Yeah, do go check this out. Kieran's putting out some absolutely fantastic comics at the moment here. I'm getting a sneak peek of some of the stuff he's working on now, and there's a whole load of add-ons. You can get previous comics done by TBH Comics, including the Grim Scary Tales, Kill the Bride. I do a variant cover on this, which pays homage to one of the greatest cinema actors ever seen, Jason Statham. See if you can guess what film that's from, the variant cover. So do go check that out. We've got this flagged up. I think I just found it on Facebook, but they've been in touch.
I think they've DM'd us on the Instagram.
Yeah. Distinctly British Comics, a brand new exciting creator-owned cosmic comic with more bite than a British bulldog, and more punch than a punch-drunk punk. I've backed that. Sam Weller. It looks like there's an absolute ton of comics in it. I've not heard from these guys, but like, we're not the kind of the be all and end all of indie comics in the UK. So when you see it, something like this pops up,
speak for yourself.
Great. It looks great. So I back that. I look forward to reading that when that comes through. And I think that's me.
I've got one. One more. So I've got the Press Guardian 1 to 3, The Clock 1, Reviving Legends, Golden Age Heroes in the Modern Age, 232-page comic books. Two heroes taking on today's criminals, hackers, tech CEOs, and still also Nazis. So this is by our boys, the Liska brothers. I know Dan's worked with them. A couple of our buddies have worked with them. They're putting out a strong stream of comics. Going back here, they're working their asses off, and I think it's got, as we speak, as this gets released, it's got about eight days to go, and it could do with just a little bit of a push. So go and have a look at them. Once you're on the ride with the Liskas, you won't get off. There you go.
It's good because they're doing like old versions of the characters and modern day interpretations, and they sort of feed into one another.
Yeah, your stuff in that, mate, was lovely. Really nice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I did see someone talking about their books like natively. Like I'm part of a pulp characters group.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, "Oh, look at this book," and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I've
love
seen
the
this."
pulps, man. Love the pulps. Yeah.
Can I do a shout out to my patrons, because I've been annoying them posting up character designs?
I've been enjoying those. What's that, 3 or 4 different designs you've put out?
I've got about 5 or 6. I'm trying to get these designs for these bad guys down, because they're turning up in 3 pages time, so I need to get down what they look like very quickly. But thanks for all the feedback for all those involved in that. Yeah. I think I've got it locked down now. Finally.
Good work, man. It looks great. The use of the sort of luminous light on the black costume looks great, I think. Yeah, that's always kind of like a good one to go for that. If you kind of have a dark kind of design and then a light element popping off. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice. Speaking of cool and nice and popping off, let's pop off some comics for people to Google and check out and order, etc. Tony, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think you and I both got 2, Danny boy, haven't we?
I've got 2. One's a quick one, but I'm going to be more attractive than the second one.
Okay, I'll do my first one then. So, am I right in thinking, guys, that we've heard the story, we've heard the phrase, the saying that you can never go home?
Yeah.
We've heard that, haven't we? Yet we spend our lives trying to recapture that magic, don't we, of the comic books we read in our teens, I would suggest. And it's very rare you get that magic back. I did this week. I was sat in a coffee shop at like 6 p.m. waiting for Falpy. We've been going for a dinner, planning out the Kickstarter progress, and every couple of weeks. And I read this, and it fucking brought it all back. And I've decided you can go home. So mine is Badger, Mad Monkey, Shock and Roll, which is the current series out of the new version of First Comics, which I think is run by like one dude, I think. Okay. But they've got the creators of this book, Mike Barron, Val Mayorik, who is one of my favourite all-time Bronze Age comic artists, is drawing it. And they've also on the books they've got Bill Willingham as well now.
Wow.
So you're like, okay, hang on, what's going on here? Yeah. So for those that don't know, or so Badger is a multiple personality person. Norbert Sykes being a combat veteran with these other personalities held back, one of which is Badger, who's the sort of dominant one, who's a very skilled martial artist. He's the bodyguard of a wizard called Ham, and they live in a sort of type of castle with a couple of other people. Badger is far from stable. He's variously good or bad. He has relationships, good or bad, with humans, human-animal hybrids, and animals. There's a lot of chaos, violence, deranged hilarity, and easily one of my favourite characters. Just easily. I love the martial arts dynamic, and he kind of takes it to another step. There's one point where his chi manages to defy gravity in one issue. Awesome. Back in the 90s, which is lovely. It's $6.99 this one, which is quite expensive for a single issue. However, I offset it by buying it through the Forbidden Planet mail order, where it was less than £4. So, and I think the earlier issues are like £1.50 or something. So I said, written by Mike Barron, art by Val Mayorik, come to me. Colours by Wes Wong, letters by Willie Schubert, cover by Barry Mecklin and Charlie Hogg, and then it's by Alex Wald. Me and Cliff and Ian Ashcroft did a podcast just about Val Mayorik because I just admire his stuff. He has changed. I actually put him a little bit closer to Cliff. I think his early work is just the Kaza stuff and the Howard the Duck stuff. It is a little bit closer. Now he's more knows what he's doing, meat and potatoes, good action comics. That's how I'm going to put it. I've sadly only got issues 2 and 3. I couldn't get issue 1, which is on its way from eBay for me. But in the first one, he's been about to be attacked by a massive kraken, and in the cover of the second one, he's fighting one of those sort of gill man, fishmen, creature from the Black Lagoon kind of character. So forces are massing to attack both Ham and the Badger, and there's this weed smoking, cannabis growing pirate who it's just like Badger will have a fight with him, and then the bloke will decide to start smoking weed, and then the sort of fight stops. It's just like, and Badger gets put off approaching him once because a load of monkeys they chimp him, they throw their shit at him. Badger's got this weird relationship with the monkeys now where they kind of hate. So under the island that they live on, where this castle is Lloyd Gilman. He's got a secret submarine base, obviously. And there's something called the Zigzags, which is a pharmaceutical biological research weapon. One of Ham's staff admits to the other lady who works there when she's sleeping with her that she is in fact this Gilman's daughter. So there's a bit of a mix up there. And amongst all this mess and this sort of craziness, the Badger sort of works his way through it, just fighting people, popping off crazy at people, doing other things for Ham. And it's one of those things where you think, I'm just going to enjoy this. The story is like all over the place. It's like a 60s movie where they started off just writing it and making it up as they went along. But Barron knows his way around dialogue, and the facial acting from the Mayorik and this sort of stuff is superb. It's a joy because it's just a comic series. You don't have to read 4 other comic series to understand it. You're not expecting Spider-Man to turn up or Miss Marvel or someone to turn up. They know what they're doing. Both these people, writer and artist, should be working at DC or Marvel. They should be doing a book. They should be doing the Iron Fist book or something. They should be doing it and just wrecking it every month and showing people how it's done. And you can get it through Diamond, but I never see it on a shelf. I've never seen it on a shelf in the UK, and it's only because it got suggested on the FP subscription app or subscription website that I managed to realise it was
Otherwise,
about.
you wouldn't have even noticed it was.
No.
Oh
No.
man.
I thought he was just putting out Nexus books, and now I've got a Badger novel that Baron wrote, and I thought that was the last thing he did. He did a thing where him and Mayorik did a thing where Badger fights Putin, obviously, about 10 years ago, of which I have a page on my wall in my office. But yeah, it's just great stuff. It just really good. It just felt like that. You just no one's bothering you. I sat there having a coffee, perfect moment. The world was cracking on around me, and I just managed to sit there and read a comic. I'm not one of these people who won't read comics in public. Fuck you all. I will read a comic in public.
Yeah.
If you're going to take the piss out of me, I'm going to punch you in the face, but I will read a comic in public. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I sat there reading Badger in a Costa coffee. There you go. That's my first one, guys.
Nice. Damn.
People taking the piss out of you reading comics. I can't see that happening nowadays.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. I can't see it anymore.
Going on.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember there was a thing when we first started this about people going, I read a comic in public today? And so, fucking, I've been doing that for years, mate. Calm down. Yeah.
Dan, what have you got?
I've got 2 books. The first one was sent in to us from Markosia, Jett Jane, book 1, Nuclear Shadows.
Oh, I've read this. Yeah.
By Amal Desai, the author, and Paul Essienson, who's the illustrator. In a diesel punk 1955, Jett Jane hits the skies after killing her abusive husband, Rocket Man, and becoming public enemy number 1. If she's to survive, she'll need to outfly the looming shadows of World War II and onslaughts the nearly unstoppable armoured heroes of the age. It starts off with that interesting premise of it's based on kind of like I think it's Bullet Man and Bullet Girl, like 2 golden age heroes.
Rocket Man is the serials, isn't it, and stuff?
Yeah, so it's like essentially there's a domestic abuse scenario when the 2 of them have got married. She ends up using the rocket pack to kill Rocket Man, and then goes on the run, and it's her against the kind of various government forces trying to track her down. There's lots of good sort of story beats and parts to it. I was unsure where the story was going, and in the ending I was a bit shocked. I was like, bloody hell, that's quite a resolution. I think obviously with it being book 1, there's more stuff planned. I'd be interested to see where we go. I thought it was going to be a kind of harder hitting stuff about domestic abuse and like framing it as these 2 kind of characters and World War II looming, but it's more of a kind of like a road trip adventure comic with tons of action and fighting. If you kind of like know Markosia stuff and like it, this would be right up your street. So
I was saying to you earlier, when I kind of like that Rocket Man, Rocketeer aesthetic. I kind of like that sort of pulp thing. There's always that chance it's going to run out of petrol or break down when you're in the, there's all this sort of thing going on. I like it. It's got a lovely design look to it, that little sub-genre.
It's usually like they're not powered. They're just like people with sticking a jet engine on their back and flying away.
I guess I first fell in love with it with Torpedo. The character who was in was it Marvel Spotlight, Marvel Premiere, and then he was in Rom as well, and he had that sort of kind of appearance, didn't he?
I've got to say, I was largely kind of unaware of a lot of this stuff till I saw the Rocketeer film. I didn't really know about it. I tell you, like, there was an old video game. Was it Rocket Ranger or something? That's a deep pull. Do you remember was it Cinemaware? I'm not sure if you know that one, Vince. They did like It Came from the Desert and stuff. It used to be on the Amiga. Maybe it's a bit old school. And they do Wings, and they did one like that, Rocket Ranger or something. But yeah, good stuff. If that's your jam, man, go check it out.
Nice. I'll jump in the middle now with a book that came out beginning of April. Didn't really know about it. Seemingly went under a lot of people's radars.
And mine. Totally mine.
Yeah. And shame on me for not knowing about it sooner, but might talk about why it maybe got glossed over by people looking at our shelves, but we'll get into that. This is I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer. A nice rolls off the tongue, that title, doesn't it?
Yeah, they have a long title, don't they, at the moment?
Yeah. This is from our old pal Doug Wagner on the story.
Nice one.
Daniel Hilyard on the art. If you recognise those two voices together, it's because they did plush, vinyl, plastic, and recently there was a sequel to Plastic, Death and Dolls, I believe that series was called, which is only just really finished, I think, only a couple of months ago, and this one's followed it. Anyone who listened to the Doug episode knows that like they're having fun playing in this sort of universe of serial killers they're creating. And this feels very much, if you like those sort of books, this is another one that you should add to your list. It's another sort of interesting take on the sort of genre, which is going to be over the top. It's not necessarily for everyone, because this is dark, blood, absolutely dripping in blood, and gore, and also black humour, the blackest of humour. But it's also quite funny as well. But what is it? Well, here's something that I didn't pick out until I read the synopsis. I just wanted to read the book, and then when I realised it was these guys, I just absolutely breezed through it, so I didn't read any synopsis. But the synopsis is: Rennie Bathory has just been accepted into New York City's most prestigious fashion school. Her designs are daring, edgy, and singular, and made of human flesh. Did we forget to mention Rennie is a serial killer who simply wants to be a fashion designer instead? Stupid, pesky, murderous urges. This is just great. Sort of like, there is an edge of the seat thing that you get with these guys when they create these series. Before I go any further, the colours on this are from Michelle Madsen. Does great work on the colours. Ed Dukeshire on the letters, who does all the books as well.
Yeah.
And a couple of others. The logo for the comic is by Rico Renzi, and I'll come back to that shortly. The actual story itself goes along at a nice pace. It follows the same sort of pacing that they've had for these sort of series. By the end of it, you know where you are. You're wondering, oh my god, who's going to get murdered in hideous ways. It's a serial killer who isn't necessarily just taking out completely innocent people. They're going after particularly sort of nasty people. There's someone who's wearing a tattoo at some point, and that tattoo comes up later in the book in one of her designs. It's just schlocky fun, with some lovely characters and sort of slightly humour moments, because there's this person who is very much an introvert, doesn't want to deal with other people, and yet they've moved into this sort of school, and naturally there's people who have gravitated towards them, and they're starting to make friends. And also you get like the high school bully. Although it's a fashion school, it's like a top of the range fashion school. There's lots of stuff going on. I get a feeling like there's a couple of storylines there sort of weaving in. Things may not be what they seem. But then you get the sweet-natured person who just by their nature of being friendly to this person is almost breaking down the defences of Rennie. So that when anyone is like against that person, you can tell, oh god, the serial killer's going to do something. And so by the end of it, I was like, right, I'm in. I can't wait to see where this is going. It's one of 5, so I think that's usually 5 to 6 issues. Is normally
with his stuff, I think. Yeah.
I know, they've hit the nail on the head so many times that I don't have I'm in for the ride now.
Great track record.
Yeah, I mean, I read this on Global Comics, but obviously it should be in stores or on digital shelves, whatever. One of the reasons, and Hilyard, I love Hilyard's artwork anyway. It's more of the same. It's going to be gruesome, especially someone who's making clothes out of human flesh. You know, there's obviously, I mean, the hard drives of these guys, like, it must be awful stuff.
Right, you know.
Yeah.
Browser history.
The browser history is like, yeah. So if you don't like to see human bodies being skinned and hung up, then
who doesn't like to see that?
This book, yeah, but some people may not like that. Dan, they're
fair enough. Yeah.
But I mean, they're called losers. No, but you know, there's lots of that, and even the cover of the book has that front and center. There's a couple of skinned bodies next to this main figure sat at a sewing machine, and when you look at it, you can see they're making what looks to be almost like a tapestry in this long gown. But then when you see you can see faces and ears, and like they're stitching it together. In a wonder, what I like about the style is it's not so realistic to be super uncomfortable. There's a hyper sort of realism to it. It's sort of the issue I have, I think, with the cover, which means that a lot of people glossed over it. It looks like a panel of the book. It doesn't look like a cover.
Yeah.
And a lot of the colours, which work really well, is it's got the same sort of colour
It's
system.
an unusual cover for them because it tends to be very solid single image covers they use, don't they?
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, with Death and Dolls, there was things that were representative of something going on in the book rather than a scene. Do you know what I mean? There was lots of people like, someone pulling open their face and you could see something in their mouth, that kind of thing. Whereas this just seems to be like a scene. Obviously, it's a shocking.
It's not an homage of some scene, like a painting or a. Is it?
It could be,
couldn't it? I'm not sure.
But it's so subtle that it's lost on me. And I, the logo didn't really do anything for me. No offense to Rico Renzi.
Yeah, me neither, man.
But I feel like, it doesn't really do anything to the cover, and the
doesn't fit to the theme of it to me either.
Yeah. No, I know the title "I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer" has that schlocky 50s, 60s, teenage werewolf sort of thing, which, this is also a book that's told from the voice of the character, so I don't have a problem with the title of the book. In fact, I think it's probably a choice to maybe separate it a little bit from the plush vinyl, which had the specific things.
If just to sort of play, like couch quarterback or whatever they call it. If it was me doing this, I'd go in the way that they did that thing with Flash. Do you remember when they had the Flash saying, "If you don't buy this comic book, I'm going to die"? I'd almost do the face of someone saying, "I was a high school."
Oh, that's the speech bubble.
Almost like use it like that.
Yeah.
In that schlocky, like screaming, it's almost you can do that, can you?
That would be great. I think you could do. And I think
you mentioned about Daniel's page, I guess, like having the bit of writing paper.
Yeah, because they're at school, aren't they? Or having it in a sewn almost. There's
Oh, mate, that's another great idea. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it.
It does one of those classic. It's got a couple of variants. One by Jay Lee, which.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
imagine that being mental.
Hilyard does another variant for it, which works a lot better than the main one. And the variant is that the classic Janet Jackson black and white pose where she's topless, but there's hands over it. But there's like skinned hands over the main character.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
And they've designed that so it looks more like a magazine. So it looks like the magazine it was on. The only issue I have with that is the masthead doesn't really work either. Do you know what I mean? It's the same masthead.
Gotcha.
So,
it's the problem with this sort of fashion to having long titles as well. There's a lot to fit in, isn't there?
We get that Janet Jackson reference. Do you think anyone?
That's the 30-year-old reference, isn't it?
Yeah,
surely.
It's an old reference.
That must be why it's a variant, isn't it? You know. But saying that, it's such a striking image. It works far better than the main one. Do you know what I mean? The Jay Lee cover doesn't have the masthead. That almost looks like an independent book. Do you know what I mean? I think Jay Lee's probably actually done the title himself on that.
It's like those covers you get fooled into buying the same book twice, as I've done loads of times.
Yeah. But you see, like the inside cover.
Thank you, eBay.
The design and production is by Erica Schnatz. I'll make sure I say that right.
Great name.
And I think they did design on the previous stuff, and it's simple. Things, but they're using like sort of serif fonts, making it trying to look classy. On the inside cover it says "I was a," the title of it, but it's a little bit classy, a little bit American Psycho, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is like a leather stitched texture behind where you see the credit page. That immediately works better for the style of what this thing wants to be, like high fashion school sort of thing, than what it's doing on the masthead of the cover. So it's just. I mean,
there might be an editorial dictate that they want it like that. So you can't always just playing devil's advocate there.
Absolutely, yeah. And the book itself. I mean, these are minor quibbles because once you get past that cover, it's singing the same wonderful music that they've done on all the other series. So but just it's set in a different sort of place. Not genre, because they're still these gentlemen are fucked up. And there's the cover for issue 2 is a little more striking. There's like lots of characters putting their hands up. It's just hands being put up in the air, much like at a school when you're asking for attention, and one of the hands is covered in blood. Immediately, that would have been a better issue cover. But then if you see like the preview, like on Image Comics, when you can see what the next cover is like, and that image is there, and the masthead just takes away from it a little bit. I know it's to some people these aren't things that will bother them. They are minor niggles, and they certainly are. But for someone like me,
you see it, and
I see it, and I'm just like, oh, it could have been a bit stronger. And the book deserves it. I think sometimes we feel more passionate about it because the book is like,
you feel sort of grieved on behalf of the book itself.
Yeah.
So you're like,
because maybe some people have picked this up issue 2, issue 3, but unless they were tapped in, like, Dan and Tony didn't know about this until I said, oh, this is by these guys, and they're like, what? What?
Yeah, no, it's a shame.
Yeah. But if you missed out on it, and if you're a fan of the other ones, I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer. Look for it in your local comic, and you might have to look a little hard because it might blend in with a lot of the other covers that are on the shelf. Came out in April. There'll probably be another issue out in May, I would imagine, because it'll be monthly. They stick to that monthly schedule. So get on it now and enjoy it like I did. So there you
go.
Boom. Dan, what's your second one?
My second one's a book called Hark, which I saw on the socials. It's by a chap called Sean Manalotto, which is on Instagram and Twitter, sane_Kyle, SANE_Kyle. I'm going to try my best with the story because it throws you right in at the deep end. Like, you can barely kind of get your bearings before you're kind of off to the races. I'm going to make the lazy comparison of D&D, tabletop role-playing games. If you kind of like that kind of your fantasy like that, starts off with a kind of full-page map of the kingdom, as it were. They call it Zerwick, and it's got these various bits and bobs around there. The story starts off with a series of knights who are kind of like elfish with kind of pointy ears. Everyone in this book, there's no kind of humans. Like they're all kind of strange races, like Asimir and Tieflings and stuff like that. And these bunch of knights are waiting for their compatriots who are all females, but they're kind of from a different nation. And they turn up, and one of them's an absolute fucking unit, massive woman, red horns, and they proceed to go to this temple to take down this guy who's kind of locked himself in. He's performing some rite. And from then on, it's just an absolute like bloodbath of they battle their way through this temple to get to the top. One of them turns traitor, and it was a nice little twist that the race that this sorcerer, who the evil sorcerer is worshipping, is humankind, and they've slit off the top of their elf ears to make him rounded. And sort of homage to sort of say this ancient race who are kind of really fucked up, and we want to be like them. And the story ends up with sort of like the questing party coming together to sort of like go on to the main story, as it were. There's something about a pantheon of gods that dies every 100 years, and they can go on a quest to become the next godheads. And like, a lot of them are going to try and go for this. I think that's where the story's going to. I've only found that out through reading supplemental material. It's not explained in the first issue. Is that easy
to pick up in the issue?
No, it's literally as these characters turn up.
It's an action comic.
Have a massive fight, and then it kind of ends, and you're like, okay, I wonder where this is going to go. It ends with kind of essentially that main character on like an apothecary's table, like bleeding out, and they're trying to save her. The art style was absolutely gorgeous. Very kind of
nice.
Lot of weight to the characters. Action. Consider this one creator doing all this. The pacing, artwork, colouring, it's all spot on. Everything feels kind of very fleshy and real. It's got a weight to it. The violence is really spot on. You can see people getting injured. There's a fair bit of body horror where the kind of evil sorcerer's got all these kind of like pustules and growths on his face, and sort of seems to kind of draw in the flesh of like those he's beating around him. I had a real blast reading this comic. I think you can get it both digitally and physical copies, but it's US, so if you're looking to get a physical copy, that might be a bit easier than someone in the UK or Europe. But go check it out. You can sane_Kyle on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook, The Art of Sane Kyle, SANEKYLE. I just went onto Gumroad after seeing a link on Twitter and bought issue 1 for that. And it was an absolute blast reading it, so do go check that out.
Go check that
You want to send us that link? I'll stick it in the Substack then as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. Cool.
Tony.
Well, that's me.
So my one is Life's a Party, Not Red Deeps, which is by Sean Azzopardi. I've talked about a few of these as they've come out. This is another in Sean's autobio series. This one is slightly larger. It's almost comic size, American comic size, if you see what I mean. Usually they're a bit smaller than that. It's also quite heavy. There's a lot of heaviness, heavy subject matter, heavy moments in this, and it deals with suicide. So the subject of suicide. So maybe not for everyone, but the cover's a picture of. I'm presupposing this is a picture of Sean as a kid. He's holding onto this sort of stuffed toy, and just out to the side, he's looking to his left is this mess, this sort of entraily. It looks like a virus, a living virus on the screen. It's a very strange, but what you find out when you read it is that sort of anxiety mess, I think I call it, and when I wrote this down, plays a narrative part in the story. The comic deals, as he has done before in his work, deals with as part of the story, deals with little snapshots of things that happen to show history, to show movement, to show all kinds of things. And feelings, and so for example, it starts off with the image of an industrial chimney coughing smoke out into the air, into the sky, and then the pregnant midriff of a mother, and the words "warm and safe," and he uses that to just set you in a place, not a non-specific, industrial English town, British town, and then to show the pregnancy, which you're again presupposing is him, since you think he's been on the cover as a child. And I like when he does that. I think that works particularly well in small press autobio comics that are worth their time. Then the fourth panel on page 1 shows this virus-like floating mess, along with the words "Will the bad dream end?" So as Sean is born and his growth is sort of, you accompany him, you travel with him, and this mess also follows him, and you get a real rawness to this narrative, sad and revealing in sort of equal measure. They travel parallel to each other, and then you get to the last third of this comic, and you go, "Fuck!" It really does knock the stuffing out of you.
Oh, okay.
It knocked the stuffing out of me so much that I reached out to ask her if he was okay. To be fair, Sean, you haven't replied yet, so please reply. My thoughts on it are that finally we don't get this enough. Someone is digging deep emotionally and combining the emotional with the artistic. We get it, we just don't get it enough. There's it's Jungian in its depth, it's Freudian in its depth in a way. You relive that early life, even the pre-birth moments, and it reveals more and more as you go on. And I commend Sean in doing that. He exposes a lot of personal stuff. If we've talked about this before. There's a lot of biographical comics, novels, and movies and everything, which only really show the reader what they want. They want to make that impression, where they're mostly good about themselves, a little bit vulnerable, but they want to make that impression on the reader. There's no, if it's a true autobiographical, you're not worried about that. You just put what has happened out.
Yeah,
that's how it works. If you're sort of corralling bits of that away from the reader, you're doing the wrong thing. And I don't think he does that here. I think it's very good. It's done in two colors, limited palette. I'm going to show you guys some of the last pages. Some really interesting double page spreads towards the end there, where we get into the sort of the real meaty sort of personal stuff there. Some of those pages should be up on the wall. I think they're really good. So I think some of his best art, actually. So Life's a Party, Not Red Deeps. I got it off the shelf but you can find Sean all over the place. You can find it in small press comics in lots of different shops, so go and find it. Normally he's a regular at I normally see him once a year at Bridlington Comic Con. where me and him mostly complain about they didn't have any plates in the green room. We like complaining about that, giving it large that we're big fucking eggs on the scene. It's good stuff. Well done,
I know we've kind of dipped into that topic a few times. So like the Mind charity, obviously.
Yes. So I put the list. If you go to Tops and Bottoms this week, which I put it for those that don't know, I put on the Substack and on the website and everything thing. The best things I've read, best small press, worst comic I read, this sort of thing, and a little commentary about what's going on. And there's a link to Mind, but if you go to mind.org, you can. They're great people to help people, and for us to help them to help people. So you can donate there as well. So go and do that.
I love reading that every Wednesday, T.
Thank you, mate. You're very kind. Yeah. Thank you. Readership's really gone mad on it. I don't know why. They're expecting me to say arse or something, aren't they?
Yeah.
Try it. Yeah.
And they end up getting some great comics journalism.
You're very kind. You're very kind, Vincent.
Yeah.
Thank you, babes.
Whatever Chat GPT has pulled up.
GPT.
Yeah.
My version of it.
The general practitioner of
Bums.
No, it's got to be
Bummery.
with T. Otherwise, that'd be GPB.
Yeah.
I never forget a mate of mine. We were all making up nicknames for each other. They're sort of mixed bunch, men and women. And someone said he was drunk, and someone said, "What about her nickname?" And he went, "Tits." To be fair, she fucking ran with it. She thought it was hilarious.
Amazing. And if you want a nickname for us to give any one of you a nickname,
you can make your own nickname, can you?
No, you can't. Yeah. I said that in my office once. I said if people were going to name themselves, give themselves a nickname, they'd say choose something cool, like I'd be Blade, and then for 2 weeks,
Riptide.
Although for 2 weeks people called me Blade in the office, which I was pretty pleased about.
Well, I have to say, I made up Riptide as a joke to see if it would catch on, and I think I'm the only person who calls himself it. But I think it's funny.
Yeah.
And then when people say, why do you call yourself Riptide? I say, Riptide will pull you under.
Well, the thing is, as we learned, sometimes we want to be streetcars, but we're actually bean cans, aren't we?
We're actually bean cans. Yeah.
We call someone we work with fucking Motion Light.
I fucking want to go to that puppet camp.
What?
Yeah, sounds good.
You know, I've done the puppetry of the penis before at parties. You know, that counts.
I totally believe that.
Yeah. What kind of puppet? No, I'm not going to ask what kind of puppet was it.
No, you can't get a
finger puppet.
There was 2 Australian fucking blokes who did a whole act.
Did you ever see that? Oh, fucking hell. I've tried the burger one. That's quite a good one. Eiffel Tower looks a bit scary. Don't want to quite go there.
Jesus Christ.
I'm never looking at another man manipulate his penis again.
Again.
This week.
There's no point doing a video chat then, is there, Dan?
Yeah. Oh, you ruined it for a week for you there, Dan. Look.
What was that fucking thing? It said avocados taste like freshly cleaned penises. It's like, mate, you're not tricking me to eat another avocado.
Although I was fucking dying earlier. Because I sent to the group one of those videos that makes it look normal, then it just suddenly goes into a really loud lady doing having sex.
Done me.
And I got you 3 times.
3 times. 3 times.
And every time you would send me a meme saying 3 times.
Yeah.
At least not as bad as doing that in public transport. Like if you get caught on that.
You occasionally hear it on the train on the way home. Someone's done it.
But if you want more of this highly intellectual sort of matter, then don't go to this show, because you've been listening long enough to know that you're not going to get anything like that. But you will get a lot of comic chat, and if you want us to talk about,
we've gone long.
Yeah, if you want us to talk about anything else in the future, please get in touch with us. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at awesomecomicspod on Instagram, at the awesomepod on X. You can. Dan always, I love it. Dan does the sign with his fists like he's CM Punk. It makes me laugh. But thank you for listening to us, whether it's on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, leave a review, helps get the word out about the show. Likewise on Spotify, and if you listen on Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife, what networks are we on, Tony?
We're on the Pod Network. It was a typical day in South Minneapolis. The Crimson Gash was fighting crime in her own style. Well, you did give Jesus a blowjob, she said. There you go.
That was another Esmond reading, and I think what was one of the things that's great about it is he cleared his throat before it.
I got ready.
He's like,
I was like a proper actor.
Now we know why he rose out of the cave.
But
It's Easter Sunday, isn't it? So
yeah, Jesus.
Yeah, indeed.
I've been sending pictures of a bit where they find Spock, and the search for Spock, and Spock is risen. I've been sending that to people all day.
Nice.
I've
been posting that screenshot of Jean-Claude Van Damme from Cyborg. When he's crucified. He's got a great name, character, Gibson Rickenbacker.
Amazing. It just rolls off the tongue.
Some fucking coked up Hollywood writer was looking around his room.
Gibson Rickenbacker.
I've got 2 guitars.
To be honest, that sounds like something I used to clean out my garden.
Yeah.
Anyway.
In your pipes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But if you want any more blasphemous content, where can they go to find it, gents? Tony?
Neverendanything.com.
Nice. Dan?
You can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com.
Nice. You can follow me on social media at Jester Diablo. Join us here next week for more comics talk and more awesomeness. But wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for listening. We hope you're happy, healthy, doing well, reading comics you like, making comics you love. And as always, well, I guess in the following week, what should they do, guys?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.